All right, good morning and welcome back. Today's going to be our day 2 on conditional statements. We're also going to talk about biconditional statements and what those are. So just a real quick recap from yesterday. Remember, our conditional statement always has two parts, the if and the then, our hypothesis and our conclusion. Okay, then our converse is when we switch the front and the back, they switch places. So if Q, then P. Inverse goes back to the original statement, the conditional statement, but it negates them, meaning the opposite or not. So if not P, then not Q. Finally, contrapositive, we switch their order and we negate them. So if not Q, then not P. So we're going to practice an example of that. First, let's look our original or conditional statement. It says if the measure of angle A equals 30 degrees, then angle A is acute. So we want to think to ourselves, is this true or is this false? And hopefully you know an angle that is acute means it is less than 90 degrees. So if the measure of angle A equals 30, then yes, it is acute. So that would be true. Now the converse. And keep in mind, I'm not going to be able to type these symbols, so it might look a little different because I'm going to have to write it in words. But our converse, the front and the back switch. The if and the then stay. So if angle A, and I guess I can put that symbol, angle A is acute, then the measure of angle A equals 30 degrees. So let's think about this. Is this true or is this false? So hopefully you realize if angle A is acute, it wouldn't have to be 30 degrees. If it's 30 degrees, it is acute, but it's not always 30 degrees. What if I had 25 or 16 or 82 or 30.2, right? There's a lot of other answers, so this is going to be false. Now our inverse. For our inverse, remember we go back to the original, the conditional, and we negate it. So if the measure of angle A is not equal to 30 degrees, then angle A is not acute. And this also is going to be false, because if we think about it, just because something's not equal to 30 doesn't mean it can't be acute. We already said it could be 22, it could be 49. There's lots of other answers, okay? So this will also be false. And our final one, the contrapositive, we negate them and we switch them. So it's kind of like we take this converse and then we negate them. Okay, so the contrapositive here will be if angle A is not acute, then the measure of angle A is not equal to 30 degrees. So, is this a true statement? If angle A is not acute, if it's not acute, it has to be 90 or bigger. It can't be less than 90. So could it be equal to 30? No way, because 30 is less than 90. So this is going to be a true statement. So we have to be careful. Sometimes they're all true. Sometimes they might all be false. Sometimes it's a mixture like this one. So let's go back now. If both our original, our conditional, and our converse are true, then we can write something called a biconditional. Okay, so that's the only time if both of those are true. So I'll make a note here. If both the conditional and converse statements are true, then we can do this. Okay, and it's going to be our P, and then if and only if Q. So it looks a little different. But the reason, since both are true and it can go either way, I'll explain that in a minute. But we take out the then, and it's the hypothesis, then if and only if, then the conclusion. And our symbol for that, P, then a double arrow, because it can go either way, and then Q. So if we scroll down here, here's our original conditional statement. It says, if the sum of the measures of two angles is 180, then the two angles are supplementary. So true or false, and hopefully you know that is true. So now we will write the converse. The converse is when we flip them. So if the two angles are supplementary, then the sum of the measures of two angles is 180. So if two angles are supplementary, then the sum of the measures of two angles is 180. That will also be a true statement. So since they are both true, now we can write our biconditional. So we'll take the front part. So the sum of the measures of two angles is 180 if and only if the two angles are supplementary. And we'd be done. All right, we're going to do one more example like this. So if we look here, it says array is an angle bisector when it divides an angle into two congruent angles. So first, let's identify our hypothesis and our conclusion. We can just underline. So remember, hypothesis comes first. So an array is an angle bisector. Oops, I went too far. So that part is the hypothesis. Let me fix that. And then our conclusion, it divides an angle into two congruent angles. So to write this out now, excuse me, I need to make an if-then statement. So if a array is an angle bisector, then it divides an angle into two congruent angles. And then the converse be the same, but in the other order. So now I'm going to keep array at the front because that's kind of identifying what it is. But if array divides an angle into two congruent angles, then it is an angle bisector. Now we need to decide, are these true statements? So if array is an angle bisector that divides an angle into two congruent angles, that is true. Likewise, if array divides an angle into two congruent angles, it's an angle bisector. They're both true, so we can write our biconditional statement now. So the final thing we're going to do, a array is an angle bisector if and only if it divides an angle into two congruent angles. And we're done. Hope you guys have a great day. If you have any questions, let me know. There's no new homework today. Just finish up the assignment from yesterday on Delta Math. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.